Linux Out Loud is firing up our mics, connecting those headphones as we prepared to get rowdy. I'm Wendy, joined by my fellow Nope. I'm joined by two SUDO Show co-hosts, Bill and Neal. We're three friends sitting around a virtual table talking Linux, open source tech, gaming, and everything in between. We keep the banter friendly, the conversation somewhat on topic, and have fun doing it. This week, we're spouting off about the twists, turns, and rabbit holes of our open source journeys. Let's get into episode 111. So this is definitely something new. Bill has filled in before, but this is the first time, Neal, you've gotten to step in and fill in some gaps for us. For both Nate and Matt couldn't be here at the same time, still keeping it the three of us together. So I'm excited to see what comes out of the show. Magneto's out of state right now, and he's like, okay, I'll call you a little bit later. How long do you think the show's going to take you? And I'm like, honestly, I don't know. This is a brand new journey for all of us. I'll send you a text message when we wrap it all up. So what have you actually been up to, Bill?
Quite a bit lately. We're starting to get into our busy summer season at work with taking care of our schools. We have a whole bunch of projects lined up that we need to do, just the usual stuff, server network refreshes, kind of all on schedule. I have been dealing with what I will call docking station hell with my laptops. And Neal has been beside me the whole time through this journey of why does my laptop hate docking stations? And the long story short is docking stations are just difficult, and Thunderbolt is difficult because it involves hardware drivers and low-level code and other things that just kind of make my head spin quite a bit. It's a little bit out of my realm. I'm more of a hardware guy, not a software guy or a firmware guy. I've also been having a lot of fun taking some older NAS units that I have, specifically a few QNAP models. I have a TS473E and a TS453A. And with the former, I have turned it into a TrueNAS server. So I installed a couple of SSDs in there and a 10 gig network card. And lo and behold, TrueNAS scale works absolutely flawlessly. And thanks to the encouragement of my friend Neal here, I have fallen in love with S3 storage, which is something that TrueNAS supports through a platform called Minio. But more importantly than all of that, I took a week off of work, technology just about, and everything in between to go see two of my oldest friends, one who came out from Seattle and the other who lives a little further east of here. And it was the first time the three of us got together in probably 12 plus years, just the way schedules line up. So there was a lot of reminiscence and shenanigans, a lot of Magic the Gathering, talking about old LAN parties we would have predating 2000, classic games, drinking, eating, and everything in between. I got to see some family too along the way. They're not far away from where everybody was gathering. And I just had a great time sort of unplugging for the week. It felt really good. And I was able to hit the ground running, refreshed and recharged the week after.
That's awesome. So I need to know more about what you're using the FreeNAS server for.
It basically came down to how can I take this box and make it less proprietary? And there are lots of projects out there. And the reason why I chose TrueNAS Scale was because it's widely available. It's well supported.
TrueNAS, not FreeNAS, so I had that
Correct.
wrong. Okay.
TrueNAS Scale is very well supported. It uses ZFS under the hood, but it was very easy to kind of plug in and set up. I may venture into Rockstore or some other ButterFS-based solutions. This was just more for me to keep a box out of a landfill. Because it does have good specs. It has a AMD quad-core processor in it. I updated it to 32 gigs of RAM. It took one SSD NVMe on the board, and then I found a very inexpensive card, little PCIe card that I could pop 2 more NVMe drives in.
Okay.
And that's what I use for caching for that particular device so that I can get enhanced read and write speeds out of it.
Right.
So it's
So if
more
it's
of,
personal data you're using as a media server, like what are you like putting it through its paces with?
I'm not going to put data that's critical to me anywhere where I may be afraid to lose it. And since I have my data safe on another pair of NAS appliances, I'm only putting things on this particular device that I'm not too concerned about, such as Linux ISOs or more ephemeral data, not anything that I'm really putting critical on it. However, I may move to that type of platform given some of the recent changes that have come to the particular NAS solution that I've been using for many years. But I will be happy to keep everybody updated with my progress and my journey there. And perhaps it may be my platform of the future that I choose for my own data storage. Now, Neal, whenever you and I get together, we have a great time. The most memorable occasion you and I had last year getting together was me going for a swim in the lake without actually swimming in the lake due to the torrential rain that we endured that day while I was trying to grill outside. But we talked about many things, and we've often talked about the fact that this particular lake we visit is our quote unquote outdoor conference room. Now, I understand that you have been yourself going on many conferences. I have been fortunate enough to hear about some of them, but I'm sure everybody would love to know about your worldwide travels as of late. So please fill us in.
Yeah. I guess the best way to call it is, it's, I guess the spring. I don't know. It's is springing into Linux or whatever because starting in from like February with or actually end of January with CentOS Connect, and then going to FOSDEM, the Free and Open Source Developers European Conference. And that was at the beginning of February. And then from there, in March, I went to Southern California Linux Expo. And I then, from that, like even before the event was over, flew over to the other side of the country for SUSECon. And yeah, those were the conferences I've had so far. And it's been an interesting, I guess, roller coaster so far of these things. Like, so coming from Europe back to the States, bouncing from the West Coast back to the East Coast, and coming back, and then the interesting thing is like this the first couple of these were more of the community side, and then I went to SUSECon being a big enterprise open source conference. So this is like the SUSE's flagship conference where all their customers, partners, and sales and marketing and leadership, all those people come together. And my business, Velocity Limitless, is a SUSE partner. So I am able to engage and resell and develop SUSE Linux-based solutions or SUSE Rancher Kubernetes-based solutions, and put those in for my clients or anyone else of that sort. And so going to SUSECon was about learning more about SUSE's own strategy. And I kind of came away from that event being intrigued, I think, about the nature of SUSE's future, because I'd been to SUSECon before, and I in previous years, and I've also been generally kept in the loop about what SUSE has been doing, and I would not say I would consider myself optimistic in previous years. This year was interesting, where I see them doing a lot more in favor of making themselves more relevant, doing more interesting technologies, really trying to catch up and then sprint ahead a little bit. And I think that they're starting to kind of get their reaching deep within themselves to find that spark of courage or whatever it is that you use to figure out that you want to actually do something meaningful in the market. They're starting to figure that out. The thing that I was particularly enthused about was their general interest in the North American US market, which is something that SUSE has neglected for the past couple of decades. And also their interest in small business, which was something that I was very pleased to hear, because I've always felt that with the commercial Linux vendors, literally all of them have been ignoring the small business segment for too much. And like, if you look at the statistics, from the Department of Labor and places like that, small businesses, which are defined as companies with 50 or less employees, make up the overwhelming majority of commercial activity in the United States. That's not necessarily the most money, because we already know where the money splits go, but the overwhelming economic and commercial activity, as in churn and e-commerce and commerce and things like that, that's all small businesses. There's like, I don't know, I think the stat I looked at was like 5-7 million small businesses. It's a lot. And so like, it's kind of a mistake to ignore that segment. And I was very, very happy to see that like SUSE is taking a stronger stance towards building these relationships with small to medium businesses and finding growth opportunities to make inroads as a hungry competitor in the commercial Linux space. So that was pretty cool. And then after all of that, was coming back home to realize I have been a full year as a business person, and now I need to do taxes.
Yeah.
One of the two things that are certain in this world, my friend, taxes and open source.
No, I think it's death.
That's pretty sure it's death.
I was trying to give you the benefit of the doubt.
But yeah, so like I realized, oh crap, this is like the first full year that I've been a business person. Like I've had my business. I started it like just on Halloween in 23. So there was no activity for the year of 23, but 24 I was doing stuff, and crap, I now have to file taxes for it because it's a full year. And because I'm just a single person business and it's an LLC and it's a single member LLC, yada, 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 specifics don't matter. I basically file annually like a normal person does, but the forms I file are different. And it's a lot more paperwork. And I wound up spending pretty much the entirety of the time from when I got home from SUSECon to the drop dead date, April 15th. Putting all that crap together. I have learned a lot from this. One of which is I'm going to keep a rolling inventory of all of my expenses now, rather than figuring it out at the last minute.
I 100% like that is the best way to go about it, because I've done the scramble and I still do a little bit every
scrambling
year.
Is going to happen because you're always like rolling through expenses throughout the year.
But I have some that I know are reoccurring expenses, that those are fairly easy to keep up with. And then I try, if I've made somewhat of a larger expense. So last year when I bought my mobile workstation, I made sure that I threw that in the spreadsheet. And so for me, I just keep track of month by month. So I have a running month, and then down the side is whatever it is. So one thing would be Alphonic, because I do run audio through Alphonic for some of the different shows, mainly because I absolutely love the way, and DL kind of realized this, the way it inserts chapter markers. So they're auto in there instead of having to do that manually on the back end for Fireside or something. So that's an expense that I incur every month. And so, just adding that on there, and things that I know my accountant won't know what it is. I just write a little note, hey, this is for audio processing, or I bought these add-ons for DaVinci to help speed up my time with graphics, or whatever it is. Just little notes to say, this is what I'm using it for in relation to work, and why I'm putting it on here to help make it easier on both of us. Yeah.
Yeah. And so like for me, this has been like, I fortunately, right, my all of my work related expenses were electronic. So I had
it's easy to pull those files, and yeah.
Right. And this is upside of the way that I run my business, everything goes through my credit cards, everything goes through my
Yeah.
through electronic receipts. I make everything send me an email for my invoices and stuff that doesn't send me them automatically. I will then go bug people until they send me one. So I have copies. It's always just, can I pull them all together and have them ready to like put into a spreadsheet and be like, yo, accountant dude, this is what I've got.
Maybe you just need like a running folder where all that stuff just gets dropped.
So that's what I'm starting to do this go around is do the folder thing and just like drop all the receipts and invoices and stuff in there.
Yeah.
And then also I'm playing with this rolling spreadsheet thing where I won't necessarily have all the details in there, but I'll at least have like the macro expenses in there and have notes about what they relate to and stuff like that, so that I can then, because like last year I actually did this a little bit for the conferences, which is how I knew that I spent an exorbitant amount of money in the year of 2024 traveling, because I went to 24 conferences in 1 year.
Wow.
Let's the next time you're up here, let's come up with some sort of self-hosted, easy to manage thing that maybe I can run here for you.
Sure. Yeah, I learned a bunch from doing this. I hope I make new mistakes next year. I don't want to make the same ones.
Right.
So
I get that 100%.
That's what I'm hoping for.
I think what you just said there, I hope I make new mistakes, is something that's a very profound statement, because I think a lot of people who are doing what you're doing may be afraid to make those mistakes because they've been burned from making others. And as a small business owner, there's no guide that you follow necessarily. You have to go with your instincts or the information that you have at the time to make that decision. So I actually really like what you just said there. That's something that I'm going to take away from this episode of, I hope I make new mistakes next year. Thank you for that. That's actually really deep and profound. I don't know if you realize that.
Sure, we'll go with it. But like, really, when it comes to being like a small business person, especially like when you're running as lean as I am, where like all of my stuff are electronic records, I'm engaging with people. My biggest expense as a business is me traveling all over the place to like go network or engage with existing or future clients, right? That means that the risk of failure is actually not that bad. So the risk of failure is basically my business gets shut down and I have to pay back whatever is either overspent or underspent or whatever, right? Knowing that I already run this lean and there's not a whole lot of spending going on beyond the things that I'm using to like travel, it's okay. Now, if I had other people underneath me, the dynamics change a little bit. If I have employees, then the risk profile is different. I am now dealing with like basically playing with other people's lives, right? The only life that's going to get screwed up by this is my own. And so that's not great also, but it's less bad than like if I screw up, an account and make an accounting error that like I have to lay off 10 people because it turns out I don't have money that I thought I had, right? That and even all that said, the way that I actually account for how my cash inflows, I use a system called FreshBooks. It's super easy. My first go around being a freelance consultant and journalist, I used FreshBooks way back then. I liked them then, so I used them again now. It makes it super easy to keep account of the inflows and outflows as you're doing it. Now, I don't necessarily get to invoice using FreshBooks all the time because not my clients don't necessarily require me to use invoices. Sometimes they do other types of billing mechanisms, and we go through that. But I keep track of everything additionally in FreshBooks. So I will at least know what the heck's going on for my cash flow. And so that lets me be a little bit more confident about the goings on of my P&L, for lack of a better phrase, profit and loss. So that was basically like the last couple of months, really. And then Fedora and all this other stuff happened, and we'll get to that later.
Very cool. So you do so much traveling right now, both last year and this year. Do you have some tips for anybody who is wanting to go to conferences? Like, what's some good
Yes.
conference tips?
So, the first conference tip I will give you as a man who's been doing this for so long that he's freaking tired all the time now. Actually add 1 day before, 1 to 2 days before if you're domestic, and then ideally 2 to 3 days before if you're international. The reason, especially if you're coming from the US to Europe, the clock changes are not in your favor. And so
Right.
as you're flying eastward, you are flying forward in time. And as you are flying forward in time, you are losing time as you are traveling through it. And so, if when you land, for example, and also because of the way European airports work, US to European flights are always in the evening, which means you're always arriving in the morning. And if you're a poor, unfortunate soul who can't sleep on an airplane like I can't, um, you will really, really want to realize that you'll want that extra day. That I said 2 to 3. So if you have 3 days before you actually have to be performing, then that first day you're just going to plow through being awake, even though you're dead tired. You have to be awake from the 9 a.m. that you land in either Amsterdam or Frankfurt or wherever to when you get to your final destination, you're all unpacked and you're all done and you've gone and met all the people, you've checked in and you figured it all out. You still have to stay awake until you reach your normal sleeping time, and then you let yourself sleep. Because if you don't, then your rhythm will be screwed up for the rest of the time you're there. And it is really, really hard to recover from that. And so that first day, you are a zombie, you are a living zombie. Just, it's okay. Just, it's fine. Then the next day is the day that you start give you your padding day of okay, go out and explore, go figure out how to navigate, that sort of stuff. Because you're going to need to know that stuff as part of socializing with people after a planned event schedule. So conference days, you'll have the after days of they'll hey, yeah, let's go hang out and have pizza or go have Indian food or whatever. And you need to know how to get there. And you should take the time to be prepared for that. Feel free to ask the concierge at your hotel or whatever. They can definitely help you figure that stuff out. But take that day to figure it out. And if you want to, also use it to explore a little if you want. If you've never really traveled before, it's a good time to do that. Then that third day is usually your first day of being on and engaging in conferences or pre-conference registration or any of this other stuff. You're ready to go. So most of if you do these things, you're basically set up you're set up for success for the rest of it. When you're going to conferences in the US, if you're a European listening, coming to the United States, one thing you'll want to have a heads up about is figuring out whether or not you have rideshare systems available in the city you're in. Now, ride shares are universally available in the United States, but that does not mean that there are drivers available everywhere. So, same for in Canada and other places. North America is so much sparser than most of Europe. So, walkable areas, even if you ignore the whole car thing and the highway system and all that stuff, people like to point to that as the reason why there's nothing in walking distance. That's not the reason why. There's a lot of reasons. It's very complicated. But it actually boils down to people were able to settle very far apart because they settled originally for big farms, and then later urbanization kicked in. But urbanization goes middle out. And that means that people who are on the outer edges or people that build up around the outer sites will be spread out more. And lots of cities in the United States actually started out as multiple smaller cities that annexed or combined together, and thus they're not homogenous and they're not connected enough for you to have things like public transit work. Plus, public transit only works at a sufficient density. Otherwise, it just doesn't really work out population density wise. The Northeast corridor where I live, lots of it. I mean, Bill and I are both in the Northeast Corridor. We have reasonably good public transit, reasonably for the region. And then in the West Coast, you have some of it, but not a lot. And then in the Pacific Northwest, you might as well give up. And
or middle of the U.S. where I am right now,
Yeah.
there's none. The town that's closest to me is finally big enough that they need to think about it. But
Oh, wow. But like your average city in the United States is probably a third of the size of an average European city and
Yeah.
1/10 the density. Like,
Mhm.
and that's what makes trains not as effective, and things like that. So if you're coming from outside to North America in, figure that out. That's actually important. When you're going from North America out, if you will want to figure out your choices of, do you want to have an international driver's license or do you want to rely on public transport? Depending on the country that you're in, one option or the other might be better. I have gone with generally the rule of just relying on public transport or ride sharing available, because I don't actually like driving when I am not in the US. And a large part of that is because, especially in Europe, there's a drinking culture. And yes, the alcoholic content of beers and stuff is milder than here in the States. But I am a lightweight personally when it comes to alcohol. So I am not ashamed to admit this. I am a lightweight with alcohol. It affects me very strongly. And so I just don't take the risk.
For safety reasons and stuff, just rely on public transit.
Yeah. And also, most European cities are dense enough and close knit enough. And for a lot of historical reasons, the train systems never stopped carrying passengers. And so the train systems are there. With the exception of Germany, all of them are generally very good about being on time. They accept credit cards. They do electronic invoices. They'll even do it in English, even if that country's language is not English.
Nice.
Germany is the exception where I feel like I want to hit my head on my desk every time I have to engage with it because it's a Spartan mess and it just is whatever.
Aren't you headed back there soon?
So, so like I'm going to the Czech Republic in a couple of weeks. Czech Republic's great in terms of the stuff, the modern infrastructure. They take my Amex. It's fantastic.
Okay, yeah.
And then I have to go from the Czech Republic to Germany, and this is where the downgrade begins. Because as soon as you switch into Germany, then things are a little bit
different,
rustic.
Yeah.
And I think this is just the consequence of like, the easiest comparison I can make that I think most people understand is internet service. The U.S. was one of the first countries to have widely available broadband internet services. And those broadband internet services were done over phone lines with ADSL, and then later cable, television coaxial cable. Consequently, it effectively hurt the adoption in the future for rolling out fiber internet services. Now we're finally getting there. Fiber internet services are rolling out in almost every state of the country in some form or fashion, but it took 20 years for fiber internet services to start getting broadly rolled out. Whereas when you go to, like, for example, in Eastern Europe, like the Czech Republic, or Hungary or whatever. Now, Hungary is more Central Europe, but whatever. Who's splitting hairs? But like when you go there, because they missed all that, they're getting the fiber internet everywhere because it's cheaper because they're not having to retrofit. They're not having to pull all the lines out and start over. All that stuff they just get to leapfrog.
How about your cellular data? Do you have any issues with your cell phone when you go overseas?
So I made the choice when I first started doing international traveling over 10 years ago to switch to T-Mobile. And when I switched to T-Mobile, one of the reasons I did was they offered free international roaming. So, so I have international data and text for free when I'm traveling.
Nice. So I'm set that way because I already have T-Mobile and I'm on a T-Mobile business plan. So,
Oh, so
if I
you're
ever
super
get
good.
invited to Europe again, I'm good. Yeah.
You're super good then. Bill is the only one of us who's not really in the good lane here. I think he doesn't use T-Mobile yet.
You are in the wrong, sir.
Oh, wow.
Because I did move to T-Mobile recently.
Wow. All right. That means you have no excuses when I want to bring you to the Open SUSE conference, right?
I will find one.
But yeah, like, so because T-Mobile has good, because T-Mobile's owned by Deutsche Telekom, which is the German parent of T-Mobile US, they are able to leverage the relationships of DT to have good connectivity throughout Europe. Now, if I didn't have this, and I was, say, for example, using, if I was a poor soul using Verizon or AT&T, I now have a phone that can take a secondary electronic SIM. And so now I can do that.
Which that is very nice about a lot of the modern devices, is being able to like pick up a temporary SIM there and use it when you're there. And
so a bunch of people tried to convince me that I was being a Luddite for not using the eSIM for my primary service. I personally like the comfort of being able to take in and out the SIM card, because then I understand the constraints in which I can actually like switch service providers. Plus, my phone's unlocked. I want it to be able to work with everything.
And I have a question then. Are you still using your Libre 5 for your travel? Oh, never mind. I forgot.
That would be no.
I never got that phone, Bill.
We have talked about this at length, and I know where you stand on your Libre 5.
You didn't have to bring that up. That was a low blow. But
dirty Bill.
I've got a Samsung Galaxy S24 Ultra.
Okay.
I don't have Matt to pick on. I need another person, and Neal just happens to be here, and I couldn't resist it. And
you know him so well because you've hung out with him.
Yes. I just couldn't.
And he knows that I'm not actually mad at him yet.
But unlike a Libre 5, which we know does not work, Wendy, I fear to bring it up because I don't want to jinx you, but I think you might be onto something. You might have resurrected a piece of hardware.
I did resurrect a piece of hardware. So one of the last times we talked, I think it was 109. I was talking about my frustrations with my printer. I brought up that Sean had like kicked in some different ideas how to fix it. So I guess it's been a couple weeks ago now. I know we didn't get to talk about it on 110, though I did have it in the show notes. We were just so busy chatting away on other things that didn't happen. I finally sat down and was like, okay, I'm going to take some time. I'm going to go through this and I'm going to try to figure out what's wrong. And I'm looking at it. I'm checking all these additional logs. I'm SSH'd into it. All of that's fine. The connection's good. I'm seeing it on my router, and I've got a folder in my Firefox that's local servers, right? So one of those local servers is my main cell. I'm clicking on it, and it's loading the initial interface, right? So I know that it is being able to connect to the Raspberry Pi, and the fact that it is seeing that server. I put in the web address, and nothing's happening. Like it keeps timing out, telling me it's not there. It's whatever, and I'm concerned that it's actual communications somewhere else, right? I go ahead, pull the SD card out of my Raspberry Pi, I reflash it, reset everything up, making sure I'm writing down that IP address and the port that it spits out during setup. I just want to double check, right? Fresh install, and I'm getting the same issue. And I'm like, what the heck is going on? I'm at this point spent multiple hours on it. I'm so frustrated. And what keeps coming back to me is the fact that I'm typing in that IP address and port, and it's thinking for a long time. And I'm like, okay, there's got to be something there. There has to be some sort of base that's being touched at this point. And I'm like, screw it. I'm going to load up this main cell server on my phone. And it connects. I can see my flipping printer. All of it's there. It's ready to rock and roll. And I'm like, why can't I get it to work on my desktop? This is absolutely ridiculous. So what it ended up being was the privacy and security settings when Firefox updated, even though I had it set to not use HTTPS only mode, it was trying to pull in that main cell server and that connection between it and my printer on HTTPS. So I went into Firefox. So you go privacy and settings. I will add some screenshots here. Go to HTTPS only, and there's up above it, there's manage exemptions. And if you click on that, I was able to add my printer address directly into that. Lo and behold, I can access my printer.
So
that's it.
This entire journey that you've had with your 3D printer that I've been a part of through different episodes, all boiled down to a Firefox setting.
Just all boiled down to a Firefox and privacy and security setting with HTTPS. Yeah, that's it.
I feel mad for you.
I was so happy to have it solved and so frustrated, like, at the same time, right? That this is what was keeping stuff from being printed. So thankfully, there was nothing at the time that was critical. The one or two things that needed printed before we went to Worlds, whatever, somebody else could print it. And then, just running out of time, not being able to work on it till I did. But it felt like a silly thing to not be able to access it, especially knowing that on my personal settings, I had the HTTPS only mode turned off, right? So I wasn't expecting it to try to automatically upgrade that internal connection to an HTTPS web address.
Pro tip for you, I would somewhere along the way try to make sure that the address you're connecting to your main sales server remains consistent, either with assigning it a static IP or
which
giving
is
it.
What I've done,
Perfect.
On my router, yeah.
Perfect. Otherwise, you'll have to add an exception every time that changes.
Yeah, which would be a pain. So yeah, on the router side, I've been able to go on and just say, hey, keep this for this device. So that isn't that big of a deal overall. But that is a good tip if anybody else is dealing with that. And then once again, you can't access it. Maybe that IP address has changed, but it's solved. I finally have it up and running. I haven't been printing on it lately. We got a second 3D printer that showed up, what was it, last week? And it's fast. It's really fast. So I've actually got some stuff printing on it right now. My daughter found these really cool mushroom shelves. I'll have to drop a link here in the show notes. But like the mushrooms that go on trees, so they look like steps and stuff. So she found these shelves that look like mushrooms, and that's currently what's printing on the printer at the moment. But I love it. It's a Soville SV06 plus ACE. I know it's a mouthful. I'll drop that in the show notes too. I'll spend some more time talking about it on the next episode. But now that I have this one up and running, I'm going to make it not run anymore. We're planning some upgrades. We pulled the base framework of it into CAD, and we're going to spend some time tricking it out, adding some better rails on it, adjusting how that Z-axis works, stabilizing everything, and putting a second print head on it so we can print with multiple materials at the same time. So it's working, only for us to like make it not work for a little bit while I have the other one that's running. Can't leave stuff alone, right?
A tinkerer's paradise indeed.
Yes, absolutely. And you have your own Tinkerer's Paradise inside your home labs. And we've got some more Home Assistant action going on, but with solar.
So I have an array of solar panels on my roof, and you would think that's enough. But no, it's not enough. You can never have too much solar power. Fortunately for me, my boss, who is an electrical engineer, has designed his own power wall. And I have now fallen in love with learning about battery technology and controllers and maximizing my solar output. So on this side of the house, it gets pretty toasty because that is the south-facing side of the house.
Right.
And as an effect of that, well, the garden that side grows really, really well. But also that side of the house gets extremely warm. So I thought, why not maximize that by adding in some solar panels? So I found a person selling some panels online, and my boss helped me design a very basic way of taking in some additional solar power with what's called a microinverter. So you plug your solar panels into this box, and then you can basically plug it into a wall. I will caveat this by saying you should not do this without having some sort of breaker or other means of manually turning off the system so that you don't backfeed electrical into the grid in the event of a power outage.
And also have a licensed electrician.
You should also have a licensed electrician properly mount these for you. I am in the process of working on that. What I'm doing right now is simply a proof of concept for Home Assistant by identifying different energy providers. And in this case, I have my electric grid, I have my solar, and then I have my solar. So what I'm seeing right now is a slight dip in my electrical usage in the middle of the day. That's how it shows up. So because Home Assistant is so powerful and it can do so much cool reporting, getting it all plugged in is easy. It's getting Home Assistant to give me the data that I'm looking for in the format that I want. That's the challenge, but I'm learning a lot through it. I'm learning about the back end of Home Assistant with its YAML-based configuration schema. It's been a lot of fun. The next projects I want to add into it are some of those self-hosted smart speakers, like the smart speakers that the Home Assistant Foundation has recently come out with on their own. I like the fact that my voice data would not be going out to a cloud provider. And no thanks to you, Matt, wherever you are, I want to tie in that little AI cluster that you convinced me to buy some video cards for, which a friend of ours helped configure.
You bought video cards?
I bought 3 3070 6 gig cards. And the reason why I picked those cards is because they fit into the Minis Forum MS01s that I purchased. So you'll see those.
They're SFF cards.
They're very SFF cards, and I don't need external power for them. So Matt helped me pick out these cards, and another friend of ours in the community who is an AI and machine learning guru helped me set them up. But now I want to take the AI piece and I want to take the Home Assistant piece and I want to merge those together. And I've seen some really cool projects of people controlling their home, or like I had an injury, but other people may have mobility issues. Other people may be older and don't want to leave their home. They want to keep their independence. So my way of kind of giving back to the open source world for everything it's done for me is, how can I develop something that is easy to use and easy to interact with, but also retains people's privacy and security? So that's my end game in this. And in fact, we actually used Home Assistant and some custom electronics and our 3D printer at the office to print a gate controller for one of our business customers. And what that did is, while he has a gate, and yes, it came with a controller, the electronics in the controller were proprietary. They weren't working. He didn't have a clean way of interfacing with it. And one of my employees is an electronics guru, found a little SB32 board, a couple of different electronics parts, and a 3D printed enclosure, and we remediated the gate issue for less than $15. So it's really nice for him to be able to get an alert on his phone from Home Assistant. It shows him who's at the gate. It actually provides a printout of the license plate, and he can then choose to open or close the gate from a simple push button. So that's the fun that I have had with Home Assistant. The more I use it, the more I love it. And I believe recently on an episode of This Week in Linux, Michael Tunnell described Home Assistant as possibly the platform of the future for smart homes. And I really think he's onto something there.
I think so. Like, there's been some fun smart homes in the history of TV shows. And why I liked Sarah, I would like to avoid some of her downfalls. So making that open, I think, would be the way to do it.
Yeah, I mean, like the other thing about home automation. So I'm both an early adopter and a bit of a luddite when it comes to this. Luddite in the classical sense, not the luddite in the I'm scared of home automation. It's more that I like to be thoughtful and considered about when I adopt stuff like this. So I was an early adopter because I actually got a Nest thermostat way back when I lived in Mississippi, right when the thing like launched, and I think it was like 2011, 2012. And I got it, and I was blown away by the mere concept of a thermostat that was smart and understood like temperate climate patterns and used it to adjust the way that it controlled my air conditioning. Um, it paid for itself back in 2 months of me replacing my original thermostat. Because one, my air conditioning unit stopped becoming an ice block because it was sensing the ambient temperature properly. And two, it adjusted itself ahead of time based on what I adjusted the thermostat for. So over time, I adjusted the thermostat less, and it did things smarter on that front. It also promoted lower energy use, so my electric bills went down. Because again, I was living in Mississippi, which means heating and cooling are both electric. Um, so, and while electric costs are an order of magnitude cheaper down there than they are up here where I live now, that still doesn't mean that it's free. And
Right.
so, I became a believer in smart home technology from that because as basically a college student having to stretch my money to pay for bills and to do school stuff and things like that.
Right.
The amount of money I saved from just installing that thermostat within a couple of months made it worth it. And so, like, I've always installed a Nest thermostat in every home that I've lived in since then. Um, and again, I think one of the things that people tend to be fearful of when it comes to this stuff is whatever smart devices you pick, especially if they're connected to an ongoing service of some kind. What happens when the service goes away? This is where I tend to be considerate about the provider of the smart technology. So, for example, Nest and later Google, when they, selling the Nest thermostats. I've had previous experience with Google where when they have sold and offered products and then they've discontinued it when it was a physical product, they spent the effort to make it so that the physical product is useful without them. So I think the most recent example most people will recall is the Stadia stuff. So when Stadia was discontinued, I actually did have Stadia equipment. I bought controllers, I had them, and I used them to play games when I was traveling and whatever. When they discontinued Stadia, they offered a firmware update that you could plug in your controller into your browser, and the firmware update turned off the requirement to be connected to Stadia to use it as a Bluetooth controller. So I just suddenly had a pile of Bluetooth controllers that I could just use. And likewise with, I think the most recent thing is the first and second generation Nest thermostats, which were the only Nests that were made by Nest before they were acquired by Google. Though that service, the network service for it to make it smart, is going away, but they're not bricking the thermostats. They're just turning into regular thermostats that happen to have a digital control, which I think is the kindest downgrade that you could get for something like this. They're also offering people substantial discounts to replace it with thermostats that are still supported, or if you're in a region where Nest is no longer supported, they're giving you essentially a voucher to go get a replacement thermostat from somebody else. So like that's like these things when it comes to smart home technology, especially stuff connected to services that you have to use with it, the reputation of the provider is important. And this is something I consider very carefully when it comes to adopting some stuff. Now, of course, you can be a lot more flexible if you are self-hosting all the infrastructure. Unlike Bill, I am still traumatized from being 10 years of an infrastructure engineer, and so I don't actually like running infrastructure that much still. So I tend to be on the avoid it side rather than the love it side.
So since you don't like running infrastructure, I'm going to assume you like running desktop environments.
Sure.
Now, if I know you well enough, I think you are a big proponent of KDE Plasma.
I sure
And
hope so.
given how well connected you are in the Fedora community, I would like to know what's going on with Fedora and Plasma. Being a Fedora user and being a Plasma user myself, this is extremely self-gratifying. So please fill us in on what's going on with Fedora and Plasma.
So Fedora 42 happened. It released on tax day, which,
Woohoo!
yeah. So my money flew away and I got a Fedora release out of it at the same time. Actually, money flew to me at the same time, but that's a different story. But
the first one sounded better, right?
the first one sounds better. There was flying money around. There was definitely flying money. So there was flying money, and then there was Fedora releases coming out from the sky too. That's great. Yeah. So this cycle is actually super big for me because this is the first release where KDE Plasma is a top level edition in the Fedora project. So what this means is that people would say, "Oh, Fedora is like a GNOME distro, and their default is the GNOME desktop with Workstation." Those statements are now false. GNOME is not the default. Workstation is not the sole desktop edition. There are now two. There is Workstation with GNOME, and then there's the KDE Plasma Desktop edition with KDE Plasma Desktop. Both of them are at a project level of equal importance. They have for many years been at the technical level of equal release engineering importance, things like that. So now from a marketing and a presentation level, they're at the same level. And you can see, like, if you go to kd.fedoraproject.org, you'll see a fresh new splash page that talks about the next generation personal desktop, because it's all about providing personal experiences. I am a big proponent of the computer should work for you. You should not work for the computer. And so I have been a fan of this renaissance of having the ability to adjust your user experience based on how you want it to work for you. So whether you like keyboard shortcuts or gestures, or you want to have your buttons on the left or the right, or all these other things, or you want to have a global menu, a dock, or you want to have a side panel, or maybe you want to have your workspaces, rotated 3D or something like that. I don't care. If these are the things you want to do, you should be able to do it, and it should not be hard, and it should be sustainable. And I believe firmly that KDE Plasma embodies this particular philosophy very well. And I'm super pleased that Fedora, who's, if you look at the bottom of the website, the motto is "It's your OS." The personal desktop KDE Plasma as the personal next generation personal desktop embodies that philosophy, that statement, really well compared to basically anything else out there. And so I am super excited about this. And it has already led to some interesting conversations and discussions about how people are taking Fedora KDE seriously. There were a lot of people in the past who would say, "Oh, but KDE's a second-class citizen. I would never use it on Fedora because it's a second-class citizen. It doesn't get enough love. It doesn't get any testing." And it's just like, it's never been true. Like, it hasn't been true. But it's hard if you don't have something that shows that it isn't true. And so this was a big way to shake things up. And I saw so many people talking about Fedora KDE Plasma Edition. And aside from it being wordy, which, yes, I get it, there are reasons for why it is this wordy name. I won't get into it because it's an even longer set of reasons than the name. But it's important. And now we have it, and it's great because this means for the first time in over a decade, there is a flagship major distribution shipping KDE Plasma. That hasn't been a thing since Mandriva went bankrupt.
I'm still waiting for somebody to ship FVWM as their primary desktop, but I think I may be waiting a while. In the meantime, I'm just going to enjoy Plasma, and all of the wonderful things that it has allowed me to do. And in fact, a little victory story for open source. When my friends were all getting together, Wendy, this may resonate with you a little bit. This particular person is an illustrator by trade and by education, and they've become very unhappy with the status of Windows 11, its privacy and security settings, and how Copilot is going to be taken over. And some time ago, I helped her get set up with a NAS and the built-in Office productivity suite that comes with it. But more importantly, while they were out visiting, I said, I want you to take a look at this laptop and tell me what you think. The laptop was one of my older Latitudes. It was running Fedora with Plasma. So when they came to visit, the word that she used, or the words she used to describe the experience with Fedora Plasma, were intuitive and elegant. So coming from a creative person who appreciates colors and aesthetics and setup, and somebody who's also not very well versed in Linux, that's a really powerful statement. And so I said to her, take the laptop. I'll be back out there in August. If you want me to take it back then, I will, but I have a hunch you won't. You're going to enjoy some of the wonderful open source software that comes with it. And I showed her the Discover Store and Krita and some of the other neat software that it affords. So a huge thank you to the Fedora team for everything they do, the quality and care that go into their releases, the awesome camaraderie they provide in their different Discord and Matrix channels whenever somebody needs help. Again, just from myself as a Fedora user and from a lot of us that use Fedora in the community, a huge thank you for the work that they do on the Fedora team.
But yeah, so that happened, and I'm very excited about it because I hope what this does is it kind of is the start of people re-examining their preconceived notions of Fedora and KDE Plasma and things like that. But another aspect of this is Cosmic. Fedora Cosmic is now a thing. So this is special not just because it's a brand new spin that exists and it is effectively taking the spot of, the Fedora KDE spin that existed before, but it is new because it's a new relationship between Fedora and a new project. So, the System 76 folks who make the Cosmic desktop, they make it for their Pop! OS Ubuntu-based distribution. Cosmic is great. And it's even better when it's on a Fedora base. And putting that together and working with the System 76 folks to make that all sing has been actually phenomenal. Like, I don't talk about it too much because people don't usually ask. But one of the things that actually made this particularly great was not just, putting the packaging and making the spin and then all that stuff, but like establishing the connection between the Fedora project and the System 76 developers working on Cosmic. So we now have a really strong, positive relationship with them, where we engage with them about the developments and work with them on issues and things like that. And a couple of the folks that work on Fedora Cosmic actually contribute code upstream to the desktop to make it better. So like there's and the philosophy from Cosmic Upstream is we want you to personalize it. We want you to adjust it. We want you to make the look and feel something more like your own within Cosmic, rather than everything looking exactly the same. This is I think an interesting contrast with another major desktop where what they do is they talk about we want this, we have this perfect vision, and we want all of the
every
versions
workflow to fall inside our vision of what this desktop environment should be.
And also this vision includes like, this is how it should look. These are the features that should be available. These are the features that must not be available, and these sorts of things. And like, I am, and I understand why they go that way. Like that mindset gives you a level of attention to detail becomes possible that you couldn't have normally, because you're able to, you're scrutinizing everything, right? But it also necessarily resolves into a more constrained environment, in my personal opinion. And like, there's just not as much things that you can do that you would maybe want to do, and you don't allow as much out of the box thinking, and it's not really, it doesn't favor you as you want to develop your own workflows and your own way of interacting with the computer. So Cosmic, I think, takes a lot of this kind of polish approach while trying to balance it with having flexibility. And they're very enthusiastic about the idea of other people taking their own takes of Cosmic based on the software and the optionality. And if there's something missing, they're always open to have a conversation about how to make the idea, make it so that an individual, user of Cosmic or a distributor of Cosmic can stand out from another user of Cosmic. So that has been interesting to observe, as like in the past 2 decades, I have observed a walk back of this. Like I had a conversation at Scale actually about this, where someone told me, the conversation came up with, well, if we're going to be successful by doing all the things that the other people are doing that I don't like, I don't know if I want to be successful that way. Like, I don't want to be successful by making a desktop that can only do a few things and then has lockdown applications, and you can't really, you don't get to own how the software interacts with it, and that like my choices are effectively not my own. I don't want that world, because as a kid, if I had that world, I would have never gotten interested in computers. Like, and that's sort of the thing that, like, I never want to be part of a world where I have made the next generation unable to be as curious as I was. And so that was something that's very important to me. And like the stuff that I work on, I hope embodies the idea of enabling and imparting curiosity onto the next generation.
And stuff to make it yours. I know DL has actually talked about Cosmic quite a bit over the last few episodes. It's been on Twill, that kind of thing. And so I threw it on my mobile workstation. I don't have it fully up to par. Like, I don't have DaVinci installed, all of that on there, because I've just been kind of playing with it. Not planning on keeping Cosmic around as my daily driver.
It is alpha software. That's fine.
Yeah, it is alpha. But that is one thing that I have noticed about it. I immediately dove into the stuff that I could customize, because it is one of the things that I value about Plasma is those customizations. My daughter's laptop is also running Plasma as her DE, and it's highly customized, from like the mouse and the fonts and all that stuff. It's very, very heavily customized. We're not quite there with Cosmic yet, but the stuff that you can customize is nice. Their dark theme is really nice. And I have to say, what I'm enjoying about it the most is the way I have more of a traditional desktop environment, but at the same time, I have the ability for tiling and being able to say, hey, in this workspace, I want to turn on tiling, and the way it flows and the way it connects. And it's so smooth and it's so nice.
It made me kind of like tiling. I hate tiling.
Yes.
I hate tiling with a passion, and Cosmic made me kind of like it. And that's a big difference. It's a big change. The other thing, actually, my favorite feature in Cosmic is the feature that most people haven't noticed is there, and is that you can stack windows on top of each other. So if you take 2 disparate applications and you drop them on top of each other, they turn into a single window that's tabbed.
Like Haiku OS does to some extent.
Yes, it's basically like that, except Linuxy. So, like,
that's cool.
I haven't played with that, but I think I need to like go do that. Time out.
This is something you would like, Wendy.
It is so, because like, so I have a severe ADHD brain when it comes to interacting with literally everything. Yeah. So one of the ways I kind of combat that is when I'm working on stuff, I actually full screen things on my computer screen, and then I have background tasks where it's like music or whatever in there to like split my focus just a little bit so I can function. But if I have to work with multiple applications, my current workaround is I just, spam workspaces and just slide through them. But like, if I can just click and just switch between them back and forth within the same window, then I can be more purposeful about my workspaces like I used to
Yeah.
be, and just have workspaces for like, hey, this is a different workflow situation, and then be able to switch through them for workflow situations and not have to switch through them for applications. I got into this habit of putting applications per workspace when I was using GNOME a lot on my laptop. Because I have a laptop that has GNOME on it, and it used to be my primary travel laptop. I'm retiring it this year because when I was in at CentOS Connect, the HDMI port stopped working, and so I could not actually present anything, which is basically a death knell for a travel laptop. But I got used to this idea of like, okay, I can have an application, and then I would make a new application and put it on a new workspace, and GNOME's dynamic workspaces handles that well. And I was missing dynamic workspaces in Plasma because I don't have an alternative workflow for implementing essentially that effect, which is
right.
Being able to have the single application of focus and quickly swap it with a minor visible marker of some kind. And in Cosmic, I have both features. I can have dynamic workspaces and I can have the stacked applications, but I find myself using static workspaces and stacked applications more. And I'm throwing it on my unloved HP Dev 1. I don't like that laptop very much. The keyboard makes me want to hurt. My hand hurts after typing on it for a long period of time.
That's not a good laptop. That does not say good laptop.
That's why I say unloved, because
yeah.
I took it for a trip and I spent like 2 weeks using it, and my hands were killing me.
Wow.
Scale, and I was using it from Scale to SUSE. That was the laptop I took with me instead of the Lenovo, which didn't have a working HDMI port anymore.
Right.
So I was like, well, what else do I have? So I'll take the HP Dev 1 with me. The 2 weeks that I was working from the HP Dev 1, my hands were killing me. I had so many hand cramps because it's so small, it's so tight, and the key arrangement is just not great.
Good.
It's just not good. So I could understand why the laptop did not sell well after spending 2 weeks continuously using this computer.
Wow.
But
I'm kind of curious if we can fix your Lenovo, though, because we recently got a full rework station that's got a heat gun, desoldering gun, and a soldering gun on it. So I want to know if we can swap out that
if you and I are in the same place, I will. If you and I are going to be in the same place anywhere, I will make sure to bring the Lenovo with me, and then we can try to fix it.
Sounds good. That would be awesome.
It's not like I care. If the worst comes to worst, I've lost everything, and it's fine.
Yes.
But this is actually kind of like what led to me starting to go down the road of, well, this and a couple of other geopolitical crappy things happening is now I'm panic buying computers. I hate buying computers. I don't like the process of doing it. I am paralyzed by having to figure out, because I consider purchasing a computer a significant investment. If I'm purchasing a computer,
yes.
and actually part of the reason I'm so paralyzed is because computers are generally not upgradable anymore. And so this means I have to think so far ahead before I purchase a computer. How much is it going to be worth for me? Am I going to get screwed because I didn't think far ahead enough? I literally I've only bought a computer 3 times in my life. And that is because it is so bloody difficult to get to a point where I feel good about this. And this is where I become a very enthusiastic fan of Framework, because Framework removes this particular problem for me, this anxiety that I have that I might be making the wrong choice, because it doesn't matter. There are very few things about a framework that you would be screwed on. The one thing that you can be screwed on is if you pick the wrong sized framework, because that's just fundamentally it, right?
Whoa, what about the monitor expander? It's a thing, you put a monitor in and then you crank another thing and then it makes the monitor bigger.
Yeah, I don't think that's a reality yet there, bud.
Aside from that one, I think Asus CES prototype, I don't think that's a real thing. And I think the Asus prototype was stolen. There was a whole thing about
Wait,
that.
what?
What about the monitor shrinker? If you put it like in a big bench vise and just slowly close it, you can go from like a
Yeah, I'm pretty
16
sure
to a
that'll
13.
ruin it. Yeah.
That'll ruin it
I'm
for
pretty
sure.
sure.
Unless you're using
Oh.
one of those folding displays. Like actually Lenovo's like debuted last year, I think at IFA, I think it was. They had like this laptop that had a rolling display, and it could, or it was Computex or something. I forget what it was, but basically it could roll up, and and that was kind of neat. But no, Bill, none of those things. Basically, so last year I got my Framework 16, and the only downside to my Framework 16 is it's too big and heavy for me to take with me as a travel computer.
Is that because of all the ports that you can change out and
No, it's
all of
because
the...
of the GPU module in the back.
Oh,
The
yeah, that would do
GPU
it.
the GPU module in the back makes it sufficiently makes the Z axis long and far enough that it now doesn't fit in my backpack.
But you can take that GPU out if you want to and put
It's not a hot swap though. You have to disassemble the computer, you have to unscrew it, and then you have to pull the module out, and then you have to put in the dummy backplane module, because if you don't put something in, it won't turn on. So you have to put all that back to reassemble it. So it is not a simple matter of just unplug it and then plug it back in later. No, you have to take it up, unscrew the top panel, pull the keyboard out, remove the shields, then unplug the GPU, put in the dummy cart, and then put all the assembly back together. That's a lot. And I'm not carrying that around with me for travel.
No, I think one of the things that I learned from all the travel that I did, which was all domestic, was that as I get older, I don't want a heavy powerhouse laptop in my bag. It's not worth the aggravation and the headache, and even just the poor battery life. So
yeah,
I love that framework.
I realized that when we went to Houston, right? Because I took this heavy, chunky workstation.
Oh boy.
I did throw my charger because I knew I really wasn't going to be using it in traveling. We were moving pretty fast, and it's so big it doesn't work very good there on the airplane. So I just had it in my backpack, and I threw the cable in my checked bag. But I totally get what you're saying, is like, it would have been nice, because I did end up using my laptop when we were in Houston, but I didn't need all the powerful stuff that was built into it. We were just helping my son get some homework done while we had some downtime, some other things. Like, it wasn't anything that needed the workstation for.
Well, and the other aspect of it is because I use Tailscale, I have a tailnet that connects all of my machines over an overlay network. So I don't need all the compute power with me when I'm traveling. I just need the ability to access it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And so as long as I can access it, I'm good. So like the Framework 16 I thought was going to be my travel laptop, but then reality kicked in and it turned out it's not great for that. But it is a powerful machine, and it's great for streaming and all the other stuff that I do with it. So it is my main rig. But I was continuing to use my old Lenovo as my travel laptop until it decided that it was just not going to work as a presenting machine anymore. Between the damaged USB-C port and the now non-functioning HDMI port and the fact that the battery charge thingy is not working great, I was like, well, okay, I guess I need a new computer. And then the Framework announced that their Framework event about the Framework 12, and I was like, that's it. That's the one. So the Framework 12, I am super stoked about it, because the Framework 12 is and so Framework actually like measures down as opposed to measuring up like most people do when they do their marketing numbers. So it's actually slightly larger than 12 inches. But the cool thing about the Framework 12 is that it is effectively a 2-generation old Framework 13 with a smaller screen. And that is a big change from most 12-inch laptops, which are essentially in the wimpy CPU class. And so, like, it has a 13th generation Core i. The model I got was the Core i5 rather than the Core i3. I need a little bit of power to be able to run a virtual machine or two, so I made sure to have the capacity. And it has DDR5 RAM slot. It has a PCIe Gen 4 SSD slot, so I went and bought those third party and whatever, but I pre-ordered a Framework 12. And the thing that made me even feel good about pre-ordering a Framework 12 was what Framework is aiming for with this. First of all, computers shouldn't be boring. It's a colorful computer. Now, mine's going to be a boring black and gray because I have to be pro, but I really wanted to do the bubblegum one. I have seen the bubblegum one, and it looks awesome. And I totally regret the fact that I mean, either that or I would have gone with the Sage one, because green is quite okay with me.
I think the Sage one is kind of pretty. I was actually showing these off to the team because we are talking about getting these 12s to replace our old, worn out, old Lenovo laptops that I can't remember what generation they are. I think they're like...
But they're old.
Yeah, they're definitely very old. Anyway, they're very tired and don't work great anymore. And the one kid was like, "We need one of every color."
I mean, I guess I think the size of your co-op, that is possible, but like...
It is possible. I would like to have some consistency, right? And kids not arguing over, I want the bubblegum one, I want the lavender one. I'd be like, just...
All of them are bubblegum. They're all bubblegum. All the kids' ones are bubblegum, then yours is Sage, and we're all good.
We're good, yeah.
But like the thing that I'm really happy about, it's actually a couple of things. So first is I observed that particularly when I'm on long domestic flights, I don't have enough room for my 15-inch laptop to be able to use it. So I need it to be smaller. But I noticed that based on the recorded dimensions of the laptop, the keyboard size is basically the same as the Framework 13. They didn't shave off any keyboard space. So if you're comfortable with the 13-inch laptop's keyboard, or the Framework's keyboard in particular, you'll be perfectly happy with this, even if it is smaller. The other aspect of this that I like is that it folds 360 degrees, which means I can actually use this for multimedia when I'm sitting around, and it has pen input, which means I can draw, take notes, all that sort of thing. It also is mil-spec damage resistant. They list on there that it is mil-standard 810 durable shock-absorbing chassis.
Which is even better for using it with kids.
Yes, it's great with kids. And actually, this is the whole point, right? If you go to their website about this, they mentioned that this is really about that. And like, there's a current promotion right now. If you purchase pre-order a Framework 12, and you throw in a donation, an additional $250 or more towards Hack Club, which is a nonprofit aimed at, getting kids into software development and computer-aided design and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
It goes that money goes into a pool in which Framework will go and donate Framework 12s to kids who can't afford these computers.
Nice.
For the purpose of being able to help them actually improve their computer literacy. And like, these computers, like, reading the design docs, because they're public, they give it to you, and reading and listening to Nirav and a bunch of other people talk about like the ideas behind the laptop. I'm totally sold on this. Like, this is an amazing computer to have because it is a durable, featureful, small form factor laptop. And that is something that I need as a travel computer. And you remember I mentioned how the ports aren't working on my Lenovo. Well, if ports suddenly stop working on this framework, I'm going to just replace the port card. And that's a way cheaper replacement than having to go and buy another computer again.
On the subject of schools, though, if you have to replace the little port card, does that make it a report card?
Bill?
Anybody?
Bill?
No one for that joke? Okay.
Bill.
But more importantly, Neal, I have an idea listening to, what Wendy's trying to do and what Framework is going to offer with that 12 once it's available. Why don't you and I collaborate on a way to give Wendy an interface in which she can centrally manage
sounds like
said laptops? I think if using some very widely available open source automation software, and a front end that she can log into and say,
Yeah.
hey, I want to push Vim or NeoVim to all of these laptops. Let's go. Done.
She's
I
not
wa-
That would be
mean.
nice.
I want to push
She's
updates
not mean to her kids. Why would she inflict Vim on them?
because it's less mean than subjecting them to Emacs.
How dare you?
Anyway, being able, I think, to push packages, update the laptops,
Yeah.
do different things with them without having to touch each one individually would save her a ton of time. And it's certainly within our playbook
Yeah.
hint
Oh my
to
gosh.
be able to do that for her. So for those of you that are listening or watching, the word playbook should mean something. If you follow the SUDO Show, you will understand what playbooks are and how they tie into automation. So Wendy, the
This
next
is
time
how
that
Bill ropes me into teaching him more things.
I know what I'm doing here, believe it or not, but
Good.
Neal did provide me a lot of context for that. And I think using in the spirit of open source, some Git repo availability that somebody wrote specifically for Plasma and Fedora, we might be able to come up with something neat. So I think that's our next challenge, Neal.
That'll be fun for sure.
I like it.
You know,
I like
and
it
this,
a lot.
you know, speaking of managing software and systems, you know, the other thing that happened for me recently was that my first ever commissioned open source project was released. So,
Ooh.
Wow.
so like I have been for almost the past year working on this project. You know, it was commissioned by one of my clients, and I got to release it, and it's called Courtshoe. We have a blog post about it on my company's website, Velocity Limitless, but also on the CentOS blog, and we'll throw links to those in the show notes in case you
definitely.
care.
Awesome
But
my
like,
way, so I can share.
yeah, so like the cool thing about this is that this is something we're using in the CentOS Hyperscale Special Interest Group for being able to optimize our production of CentOS Hyperscale releases. So we're able to collect up all the repos, all the images that we're building with it, and put it in something that is basically stamped with some metadata to tell us this is where it came from, this is what it's here for, and if you want to like run tests on it or whatever, here you go. And the idea is that this would be fed into like automated testing pipelines within CentOS when we have those in place, and be able to say, hey, these are great. And then we can auto update the website to point to them and that kind of fun stuff. We're not there yet, but we're starting. And like I was able to release it as open source software. It is available public on GitLab, and there's more information about it. But like this is my, a personal success that I'm very happy about. It's my first paid project completed.
Yes, it says created on May 5th, 2025. So like very, very fresh release.
Yes. Between that and the panic buying computers and all that other stuff, Wendy, did you have any fun with computer hardware recently? Because
I did.
I'm sure you've had plenty.
I did, but actually it was my daughter who has had the most fun with computer hardware. So she's my artist. I've talked about it before and how we've kind of been back and forth at some of these different drawing tablets. Wacom, Wacom, while it does work well on Linux, they have drivers that install. They are very expensive devices.
I know. I have one. I have an Intuos.
Yes.
I love my Intuos, but it also is not cheap.
Exactly. I've had a couple and they work well, and she's used them for art in the past, but she wanted something that had the built-in screen where she could see the project she was working on the screen instead of that disconnected, like my hand's here drawing, but my eyes are here looking.
Yeah,
at the screen,
and I imagine as a kid, the hand-eye coordination thing is just not quite there to the same level.
Well, she's a teenager. She's a senior. So
she should have it at least. Then.
Right. That's not necessarily an issue, but there's this flow, right? You're used to drawing with pen and paper. She's done a lot with watercolor, charcoals, and stuff.
Yeah, then it makes a lot of sense to have the screen. And while the Wacom ones are very, very nice, they are also exorbitantly expensive. I was like, I could afford one. I didn't want to spend that much money on it.
Exactly. And so what we ended up getting her was an XP Pen Artist 15 Pro. There is a V2, but we got the V1. And part of the reason why I chose the V1 over the V2 actually came down to the color profiles that were available on each screens. Overall, it could read more. There was 100% sRGB, which I think is pretty much baseline, where with the V2, they'd kind of came back on some of those colors. Now, it doesn't mean, now this one means that you're not connecting it with USB-C, where the V2 you could, but she's got an older laptop. It wasn't that big of a deal to not have that USB-C functionality for her. And I was away when it showed up, and she was like, hey, can I open it? I'm like, of course you can open it. Like, go play with it. And she said it was a little bit frustrating at first because where she was putting the pen wasn't quite matching up with where it was drawing. The pen connection and where the stylus, the circle that shows where you are, were mismatched. And she goes, I looked at their website. It had Linux drivers. I installed the Linux drivers, did a reboot, and now it works perfectly. She's done quite a bit of different art with it. And it was cool to see her do it. The one that I have, I've got links in the show notes for the ones we purchased. So there's a red circle on it that works as a zoom in and out. So as she's drawing, she can twist that, go in and out on different places on the drawing, changing textures. And she's doing all this inside of Krita, which is a very, very nice art program. So I know we've touched on new user stuff throughout the network here recently because some big names have kind of hit on how awesome Linux is. And so...
But we've already known that the whole time.
That's right. Well, I mean, I'm a little bit later to the game. I think I kind of aged myself in the time I've been here because I looked up for DL when I edited DL, like the last time that Korora was showing up in the Internet Wayback Machine. And I was like,
oh yeah,
that
wow,
was 2015.
That's a long time ago. I remember Korora.
Yeah, Korora was my first distro. I did start out with Fedora, Neal. It was just more
I know
user-friendly one. Yes.
I used to help out the Korora folks way back in the day. So
like, oh, heck yeah.
I when they decided to give up the Ghost, it was because a lot of the problems that Korora tried to solve were actually already getting solved in Fedora. When MP3 landed in Fedora in 2017, that was pretty much the tipping point that Korora wasn't needed anymore because a lot of the things that they were doing were to work around things that Fedora couldn't ship or couldn't offer.
Right.
And they were starting to trickle back into Fedora proper. Like, so a lot of these, there used to be a lot of these like fix-up derivatives that fix-up remixes of Fedora that added these extra things, and they just haven't been as necessary anymore because all that stuff is getting folded back into mainline Fedora.
Well, and I think the biggest thing that people are missing, like the reason I wouldn't tell somebody who's not necessarily tech savvy, but isn't going to go through and find and solve and search for problems is I would install it for them. My in-laws run Fedora, but I went through, I added the additional repos to it, right? I added the free and non-free and that kind of stuff to give them some of the things that Fedora can't or doesn't ship. So I think that's the only downside of just telling someone to go ahead and install Fedora is I think those other repos are necessary for a lot of people in the packages that they have.
Yeah, I think that that's going to become less true over time because a lot of that software gets to move into mainline Fedora. But also, like, in general, the stuff that people have needed that used to be in other places now being in Fedora proper, or, you know, people's workflows have changed over the past 10 years where some of that stuff is now obsolete. Like, for example, while it's technically a thing you can still do, I actually don't know that many people that do broadcast DVR with Linux anymore. Or broadcast DVR, period. Like, it's not that it isn't a valuable thing that you can do, and it's a thing that Fedora doesn't do out of the box, but it's a thing that people just don't generally do anymore.
It's a specialized use case now. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And Flatpaks, I think, have helped with that. I'm currently running Heroic Launcher as a Flatpak. I think Steam right now on this Fedora install is a Flatpak. I got a few others that are that way.
Mhm.
Orca Slicer. Oh,
Mhm.
Orca Slicer. A few other things that are running as a Flatpak that also help kind of branch that divide. And it's nice with Plasma that has some built-in functionality of saying, hey, I need this package to access these things. So for like me, I have a separate storage drive with all the games on it.
Right, me too.
Steam has to access that, right?
Yeah, because well, I made the mistake the first go around of putting the Steam on my home drive.
Mm-hmm.
And I ran out of space. And then there was
Yes.
basically no way to fix that. And that is a very bad place to be when you run out of space on your operating system drive.
Oh, definitely. Well, and not only that, if I say, hey, I want to do a fresh install. So when I decided I was going from Manjaro back to Fedora, I wasn't having to worry about those games. I wasn't having to worry about losing all that progress.
Right.
Because there's a lot of games that Magneto has spent a lot of time in. And so just being able to preserve that is nice with it being on a separate drive. And at first, that was some of my issues with Flatpaks. I've still had some issues with snaps that way. We had Ubuntu running on some laptops I guess it'd be last spring. And then the kids were trying to get into Minecraft in the snap, and we were having issues getting it to see the proper version of Java that was installed. So that was a bit of a mess. So I do like Flatpaks better in that realm of being able to send it to the right directory.
Yeah, and this is one of the things that I'm personally very happy about the way that Plasma handles the Flatpak thing versus the other desktops is, yes, it might be a little bit more functionality than what I think some people would be happier to see. Like, I know that there's people that are like, oh, but we should trust the developer, and the developer is, Flatpaks that don't have the right access grants are broken, and, the bugs should be filed and they should be fixed. But, fundamentally, that doesn't help anyone in the moment.
Right.
And in other operating systems, the ability to modify or revoke or extend permissions is essentially built into the system settings. And KDE Plasma including that means that, from my perspective, while I personally do not prefer Flatpaks because I would prefer applications. I prefer native applications, but more importantly, I prefer applications that I can look at and actually, if something is going wrong, I can tinker with and try to fix it. But if you want those applications, and again, sometimes you have to, right? Some applications are only available this way, or it's the only reasonable way to run them. Being able to control the permissions, either if it's granting too much and you want to revoke it, or it's granting too little and you need to add to it. Most famously for me is I have to keep adding my pictures and music directories to chat applications and music players so that they can see them and so that I can use drag and drop. Because you cannot drag and drop pictures from a directory that the Flatpak is not exposed to. And so, for example, Element did not have access to my pictures directory, and I could only fix that by using the Flatpak settings in Plasma to grant it access to it so that I could drag and drop pictures into Element. And that's just the sort of thing that I want to work. And I don't like the idea of leaving people to be helpless when it comes to their computer. And so I think that this is a valuable support model for that sort of thing. So yeah,
I 100% want the people to have the privacy and safety to being able to sanction off, hey, I don't want you to have access to these files. But at the same time, it's hard for me to be like, hey, yeah, you a random person out there, install this distro, it'll have everything you need. And they install Flatpak and they're like, oh, great, I can't actually access my games. I can't actually access my pictures, right? That.
Or your gamepads don't work because there's no such thing as a gamepad permission in Flatpak.
Right. Exactly. There's definitely positives and negatives. And I think some of those bugs are getting worked out along the way. And there's definitely some room that can be growing there. And on the side of games where Matt's not here, I actually recently bought myself a game for Mother's Day, so I figured I'd share it with you. This one is called Creeks, and it's right up there with some of my favorite games of all time. So like Candle, the Inner World games, these ones, it's hand-drawn. It's a really fun puzzle game. I love the mechanics of the game. I love the art style. And you can find it on GOG. Some of this developer for these games, some of their games run natively on Linux, some don't. So this particular one, Creek, does not run natively on Linux, but it is platinum for Steam Deck certified. It is running beautifully in Heroic Launcher because I did purchase it on GOG with the bundle. I got it on sale. Unfortunately, by the time this show drops, it won't be on sale anymore. Though I think full price is around $23, and I would say it's 100% worth that. Matt typically says, like, for every $10, you should get at least an hour of gameplay, and from some of the stuff that I'm seeing, it's about 10 hours to full completion if you want to go through like all of the side things.
That's a lot of content.
That's a lot of content for the game itself. And like I said, the art style is beautiful. The mechanics are awesome. And why this particular game doesn't have native Linux support, it's running fantastic for me in Heroic.
Well, that's neat.
If you like puzzle games and you like hand-drawn games, I highly recommend it.
Hand-drawn games I like. I'm 50-50 about puzzle games. I think it kind of depends on the puzzle styles, because some puzzle games where they have this steep ratchet of difficulty.
See, and they're really good about like slowly each level increasing that difficulty.
Okay, so that's a lot better because there are some games where I've played where it's like, okay, the first like 3 or 4 levels where you get hooked are easy, and then whoosh, the difficulty spikes, and then you're like, well, crap.
Yeah.
Now what?
Yeah, I really like this one. I like the mechanics of it. And there are times where I've tried to do stuff and I was getting frustrated because I couldn't solve one. And it's only because I was letting myself stick to a particular pattern, not realizing like, oh my gosh, there's this other way in front of me that you could do it. And once I saw that very first time, it's made me kind of go, oh yeah, I can do that differently. Like another one that I did today, because I have over 5 hours into this already, and I bought it on Friday. We're recording on Tuesday. I've spent some time in it. I did that on Mother's Day, right? I bought it for myself for Mother's Day. But one of the things that I noticed is I was like, okay, my goal is to get to this staircase, but there isn't any way to actually get there. And I'm like, oh yeah, if I trigger this creature to turn into something else over the button, it lifts me up and I can leave. There you go. So I do like the puzzle style. I love the art style. And because I have enjoyed this game so much, there was a bunch of their other games that are currently on sale that I just also picked up on GOG. And I might have a few more puzzle game recommendations for you in the future. If you need kind of like a heads up, Churchill, something like that, was a very popular game for a while. They're the creators of that game.
I saw that they also made Machinarium, which I am...
Yes. So I think they're a very good overall game studio with some fun, beautiful, beautiful games. Now it's your turn to toss in your 2 cents on today's topics. Hit the discourse form, drop us a line under this video, or hit the contact form by visiting tuxdigital.com/contact. If you'd like to hang out with us on our preferred social media, see the links in the bottom of the show description. Find other great shows like SUDO Show. Hopefully it should be coming back soon. You can find these 2 awesome guys there. Destination Linux, which I was on the previous episode of that, and Linux Saloon on tuxdigital.com. Show off your love for your favorite podcasts and shows by visiting the Tux Digital merch store. Grab yourself some awesome swag, like the Gamer Centric. I paused my game to be here. That's why Matt's not here. He couldn't pause his game to show up.
Wow, Matt. Wow. And
You had
Or-
one
an
job.
opportunity where Matt and I would be in the same video.
That would actually be really entertaining. I think we might have to make this happen at some point. You can also join hashtag Team Wendy with some sinister Wendy swag. As always, we thank you for joining us. We'll be back next time with another awesome episode of Linux Out Loud. Until then, keep the banter friendly, the conversation somewhat on topic, and have fun doing it.